written in all the holy books, Bani Israel, and of course in the Bible, when Jesus, was born in Nazareth to Jewish mother and a father, and actually he came to Jerusalem to the Jewish people. You have the Babylon, the Mamlukim, and you go all the way to the Arabs, and then the Ottoman Empire, and then the British managed it. In all this, when Palestine was a country.
You're saying because it wasn't legally construed as a country, it doesn't count?
No, because what I'm trying to tell you is that thinking of what Palestine or the current Palestine that you think of today, okay, is not what it is. In fact, it is not actually occupied.
Although I think most of the facts that are spilled during these campus table debates fall on deaf ears, I think it's still important to get a look into the perspective of the other person, the way their psychology and how they think about these issues. Let's take a look.
Well, it's like manifest destiny. They think they have a claim to the land over the people who already live there.
Okay.
And what used to be entirely Palestine is now Israel, with a small section now being Palestine.
When was Palestine a state? At what year?
I don't know what year it was a state, but I know the Nakba happened in 1947.
Correct. Before that, which is the Independence War, what happened before the Nakba?
I don't know when exactly, but I know that Palestine was mentioned as a country in like even Shakespeare's play, like it was mentioned in Othello.
So Palestine is not actually mentioned as a country. Palestine was mentioned as a region in the area of between what we know even greater than that, Syria, Palestina. That was way before. Palestine as an Arab Muslim country was never existed. In fact, if you have information about that, I'd like to know, because I've never seen who was the first president of the Palestinian state, Muslim Arab Palestinian state, who was the first prime minister, what was the army, and what was the flag back then. You know that the Palestinian flag is only from 1964. No. Before that, there was no Palestinian flag. Yeah. So based on that, again, when was Palestine a country that Israel occupied it? Because in 1948, whoever controlled the land, it was the British mandate.
Okay.
And then.
So because it's the British mandate, that makes it okay?
No, hold on. We go from the British mandate, and before that, there were the Ottomans.
Okay.
And before that, and before that, and before that, and before that, way all over until the Romans. Okay. And even before the Romans, do you know who were there? The Jews. Okay. I mean, it's written in all the holy books. Okay. Bani Israel, and of course in the Bible, when Jesus, was born in Nazareth to Jewish mother and a father, and actually he came to Jerusalem to the Jewish people, and obviously before that to the Torah, which shows that indicates that thousands of years Jews lived there. So if I go based on the sequence of the history, from the Canaanites to the Jews, the Canaanites were exterminated, then the Jews, then the Romans, and then you have the Babylon, the Mamlukim, and then you go all the way to the Arabs, and then the Ottoman Empire, and then the British managed it. In all this, when Palestine was a country.
I'm a little confused. So you're saying because it wasn't legally construed as a country, it doesn't count?
No, because what I'm trying to tell you is that the thinking of what Palestine or the current Palestine that you think of today, okay, is not what it is. In fact, it is not actually occupied. Let me explain just...
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Your argument only makes sense if you're talking about legality, because I'm from Pakistan.
Yeah.
And Pakistan was only a country, very recently.
Yeah.
But before then, before it was Pakistan, before it was a part of India, that doesn't mean the people who were living in Pakistan, those different groups, were not already in Pakistan. Okay. They just changed the name of it.
So basically you're saying, you're actually making a good argument for the Israelis, because Jews were way ahead of any Arab Muslim in the land.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that people aren't arguing the fact that Jews have not historically lived there. People are saying that a lot of the influx of people who are now moving there and claiming to have birthright over that, over people who already lived there. That's wrong.
And I think what you're talking about, especially about Jews who came from Europe and Jews who came from the United States, which they do have tied to the land of Israel. But what about the Jews who were in the Middle East and expelled when they were in Israel, and then they're expelled to Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and then after that they literally were expelled from those Arab countries, and they arrived to the state of Israel, to what we know today as the state of Israel. So basically they came back to their land. The fact that they were expelled from their land does not mean that they're not allowed to come back to their lands. And the fact that people think that Israelis are white, only 30% of the Israelis are white. 70% of the Israelis are not white.
People are not saying that people are not allowed to migrate because historically a lot of people have migrated. Like in Europe, there's been a lot of Muslims.
But that's not the question. The
Am I
question.
allowed to speak, or
Of course.
Because I also have class, but
Yeah,
this
no
has
worries.
been you talking most of the time.
Of course. There you go.
It has been true that people have been expelled from different places, but that's not just Jews. That's also like Muslims. That's also Christians. Like the Crusades in Europe and stuff.
Yeah.
People are not saying that you're not allowed to migrate back or whatever. But it's wrong to say that you have some sort of tie there when you haven't lived there in hundreds of years over the people who have lived there.
So
For
basically,
example,
just basically saying. So you're saying we should wait hundreds of years and then we can say the same things about the Palestinians?
no,
Why?
that's not
The
what I'm
Jews were
saying.
before.
That's not what I'm saying. You're misconstruing what
I'm trying to understand. That's why I asked it as a question and not as a claim. My question is, you're saying that just because they lived hundreds of years, they can't claim to come back and that. So I'm saying, if we go hundreds of years from now, we can say the same thing to the Palestinians. You can't come back. Doesn't matter hundreds of years. It's past the hundreds of years. So it's okay to say
You're
that?
saying that like it's not already happening. So many Palestinians are forced from their households, and their houses are given to people who aren't there. They're forced out of the neighborhoods that they have a historical right to.
So I'm asking.
Their olive trees are burned down. They don't have access to the land that they had access to. You're saying, 100 years from now, like we're gonna see this happen, like potentially if this happens, as if it's not already happening.
So when did that happen to the Jews? You cared less? Or
No, I'm not saying I cared less.
because the Jews were expelled from the land of Judea and Samaria and whatever we know today as the land of Israel,
Yeah,
which is
but-
between the river to the sea.
let's say that is true, right? So you're
It is
saying
true.
okay.
That's the history.
Okay, so you're saying the people now,
Yeah.
like 1,000 years later, deserve to be punished for that. But Palestinians who are now being massacred and genocide by people who are still living there are not allowed to be upset about that and say they have a claim back?
They can be upset, and they were offered to so many times as peace.
How were they offered peace?
Partition Plan 1947.
Okay, but I'm talking about now. Even with the ceasefire, they're still getting killed.
You-
Palestinians are not allowed to fish in their own water. They're not allowed to even collect rainwater for drinking.
You do understand that this is totally false. Not only that, because before the 7th of October, Palestinians actually fished, and I have many evidence of that. And Palestinians lived in the territory of Gaza, for instance, without even a single boot of an Israeli IDF soldier on it. They got out of Gaza in 2005. So basically, and then they say, you know what? Well, Israel controls the border, but then you have Gaza, a huge border with Egypt, and they can go and come out, but Egypt is preventing the majority of them of going and coming out. So the claim is to say that Palestinians are not allowed to fish where they are actually fishing before the 7th of October. Today, in the midst of the war, because Hamas tried to invade and take control
Wait,
of
so
Israel.
you're saying all this is because of October 7th? Nothing
No.
happened before October 7th.
Well,
That's what
there's a
you're
lot
saying?
of things happened in October 7. In 1947, because everybody's saying, oh, it's not 67, 48. No, they go back. I go back way before. I go back even to when Prophet Muhammad came to the world, which is in the 7th century, and that's about 7 centuries after Jesus was born, and that's thousands of years after the Jews were in the land of Israel. So
Okay.
basically on that sequence, we have Jews been in the land, then Christians, which a Jew, Jesus as Jew, was born in Bethlehem, and it says in I don't know if you're familiar with a little bit of Arabic, but in the Bible in Arabic they say ولد في بيت لحم اليهودية. He was born in the Jewish town of Bethlehem. So you have evidence in all the holy books. In the Quran, for instance, how many times Jerusalem is mentioned?
It's mentioned a lot, but what is the point you're trying to make?
No. Jerusalem is not mentioned even one time.
I'm
0
talking
times.
about Bani Israel stuff
Bani
like that. I
Israel-
know what you're trying to say, but
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, if you want to really claim the history, the claim is eventually that the Jews have the right to the land. But put that aside. We moved forward to the modern day, 1947. And in 1947, the UN, because the British mandate was over, they came with the partition plan. The partition plan gave Arab land and Jewish land,
Okay.
with the with more natural resources for the Arab lands.
Okay.
The Jews accepted that partition
Okay.
plan, and the Arabs rejected it, and that's when the war started, and that's when Israel won the independence war, and that's where the Palestinians start calling it the Nakba, the worst disaster that happened to them. And the worst disaster that happened to them, it happened to them because of the fact that the Arab leaders back then, and watch me, I'm not saying Palestinian leaders, I'm saying Arab leaders, because they decided to actually open a war because they wanted everything, and they didn't agree for the partition plan. And one thing about my family, I'm an Arab.
Okay.
I'm an Arab living in Israel.
Okay.
My grandfather lived in a village called Ishjesh. Jesh is a village, Gush Khalav, is a village on the northern border of Israel, Lebanon and Syria. And in 48, when the war happened, the Arab leaders from Syria and from Lebanon came to my grandfather, which was a community leader in the community of Jesh, and they tell him, listen, move, leave the land, go to Lebanon, go to Syria, 48 hours we will beat the IDF and you can come back to your land. That's what my grandfather told me that what happened. He decided not to leave and he said, listen, I'm gonna stay in my land, and when the IDF comes, I'm gonna tell them I'm not gonna fight, but I'm staying in my land and don't kill me.
I'm
so
sorry,
basically,
I do have a class, so can you please
course,
up the point you're trying to say?
All I'm saying is, the point is that when the IDF came to my grandfather's village, and my grandfather and his community did not fight, they kept their land. It doesn't mean that atrocities of both sides and that Nakba or Independence Day war happened. Of course, it happened from both sides. But the bottom line is that when people bring false information about everything's happening in the history, across the whole history until today. Last question, for instance, from 48 to 67, who controlled what we today know as the West Bank and Gaza? Was it Israel?
Even if it was Palestinians?
No, it wasn't Palestinians actually.
Then who was it?
Jordan and Egypt. In Gaza, Egypt controlled from 48 to 67, and the West Bank was controlled by Jordan from 48 to 67. Why didn't they give a country to Palestine? Why they kept that land as Jordanian land and as an Egyptian land? Look how many times they tried to, instead of actually working to a solution, they actually maintained the solution. And then back in the 90s, Bill Clinton said, we offered the Palestinians, and he said that in a live interview, we offered them a full West Bank with even 4% swap territories with Israel, Israeli land, and full control of Gaza with a tunnel or a bridge between Gaza and Ramallah to connect it, and with East Jerusalem as their capital city. All those was rejected by the Palestinians. So no, it didn't start from 7th of October. It started way before. And time after time, after time, after time, the Palestinians rejected, because they not talking about having a Palestinian state more than they want to be or to see a destroyed Israeli state.
People in charge are not representative of the average Palestinian. For example, look at Trump. A lot of people oppose Trump being a president, but he's still a president. That doesn't represent everyone there. So let's say what you're saying.
Basically, the majority.
Please speak, because you've been speaking this entire time. I haven't been able to talk. I'm already late for a class, and you've been holding me. Okay.
For sure.
So I'm saying that, let's say what you're saying is true about all this stuff about Palestinians voted for this, Jordan, the other countries did this, okay? The people in power don't represent everyone here. For example, I didn't vote for Trump, and I don't stand for everything Trump is standing for. That doesn't mean that the people who live there should be punished for whatever everyone else voted for.
But nobody's punishing them.
Okay, you're saying the IDF, okay, your situation is very unique. The IDF, they said, your grandpa said he's not going to fight, and they left him alone.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case for everyone.
That's true, and that's on the opposite side as well. It's also true. When atrocities happen, like for instance, 1922, the Hebron massacre of the Jews.
Okay.
You understand? So we can go back and forth. I want to find a solution.
I'm sure it
now the
happens on
solution
both
is,
sides, but it's a lot bigger with the IDF doing it to other people. Look at how when they go, they like massacre a bunch of women, children. They massacre
they
men.
never targeted women and children. They target terrorists who hide behind women and children.
You saying terrorists who hide behind
yes,
women
Hamas.
and children? Yeah.
Do you think you don't think Hamas is a terrorist organization?
I'm saying that there could be bad people in Hamas, but you saying that
they're a terrorist organization.
Am I allowed to speak now?
Of course.
Okay. People who say that, oh, there's a terrorist organization, the moment you say that, anyone could be a terrorist the moment you don't like them. Think about it.
I don't know, but when you go in the 7th of October and you massacre people in their houses, that's a terrorist act.
Okay, but not everyone who's doing that. It's like if you kill someone's dad and they become a revolutionary fighter, they're not doing
80% of Gazans agreed on the 7th of October when what happened the 7th of October. 80%.
Okay.
So 80% thinks that the massacre that happened in Israel is okay. And in fact, today, in Ramallah and in Jenin, they're saying the same thing.
The amount of people who have died in Palestine is so much higher than the amount of people who have died in Israel.
The amount, because Israel protects its citizens, including the Arab citizens. Why do you think we are protected? Why the Arabs are not being killed in Israel?
So are you saying the IDF is good?
I actually, as an Arab, served in the IDF. I was
really embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. I was a commander of a Jewish soldier. Not only that, I fought for my country and I fought for my community and I fought to protect the Arab community, the 2 million Arab community that lives in Israel. Not only it's not embarrassing, I am absolutely proud of my actions to actually fight terrorists. And also, when I was in the
I'm
checkpoint...
done with this conversation.
No worries about it, all good.
No, because I was fine with having a decent conversation with you until I found out you fought in a genocidal army.
I didn't fight in a genocidal.
Yes, you did. They signed bombs to kill children and women.
In fact, by the way, when we had something like this where we saw women and kids in mass, we got the order never to approach or shoot, and I am a witness for that. I am witness. More than that,
what's with all the IDF soldiers who are committing suicide because now they're admitting that they killed women and children?
Those IDF committing suicide because they saw the worst atrocities that Hamas did on the 7th of October.
Everything you're
Unfortunately,
saying, I'm just supposed to take everything you're saying at your word.
No, I want you to. No, I want you to research the evidence. What evidence you provided?
Okay, fine. Let's find research. Let's meet at a different time.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you further than that. When I asked you if Israel is an apartheid state, you didn't even know what the word apartheid means, and you said immediately land. There's nothing to do with apartheid and land. Apartheid is based on separation, segregation between Arabs and Jews.
Like in South Africa.
Exactly. Do you think I, as an Arab, becoming a commander over Jewish soldiers and many others like me living under apartheid state, do you think that we are 20% of the population in Israel, the Arabs, but we are 30% of the doctors in Israel, 50% of the pharmacists. We have a Supreme Court judges sent to prison a Jewish prime minister.
Okay,
we have bus drivers, we have sport athletes representing Israel. Arabs actually living in Israel and prospering in Israel. And they're living with
is a strong word.
They are. It's a very strong word, and I stand by it, and I can prove it to you if you'd let me. But obviously, every time I come and show you videos, for instance, show you the videos of the atrocities of Hamas. How they killed dogs even in the houses, not only human beings.
So you care a lot about dogs, but you don't care about men who are being lined up and shot?
You're literally taking one word of what I'm saying. They killed babies, they killed women and men.
So the IDF does that to us such a high degree.
Hold on. So basically you're saying because...
I'm not entertaining this conversation. I have class.
The microphone, please. The microphone.
Take it, man.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for your participation anyway, but educate yourself a little bit. I am very well educated in my reality. I live in Israel as an Arab. I fought in the best moral army in the world. Thank you very much. What's her name?
Okay, that was pretty hilarious. I didn't know that actually that backstory behind his grandfather, who was actually in Israel during the 1948 war, and they actually skipped over him, and when the Arab armies told him to leave. I guess that's a very touching moment for him that really shaped his worldview about the Jews, that we're not just going door to door knocking on Arab people's houses and killing them and taking their houses for some crazy reason. On the one hand, I do get that girl being in a rush, because I remember being in university, it would be the most annoying thing when someone was at a table try to pester you while you're running a class. I get that. But at the same time, I feel that most of these people who are arguing for the Palestinian cause and pro-Hamas movement are basically these guys running from event to event, trying to voice their opinions with their current worldview about the conversation, about the topic, about the conflict, and they're not able to actually take a break and listen to actual information that's coming out and see the actual perspectives coming out from people who live in Israel, from people Arabs who live in Israel, Muslims who live in Israel, who say that that's not the reality, and it paints into a different picture. Obviously, this woman's mind was overloaded by an Arab Muslim who fought in the IDF, is defending IDF's actions in Israel. That just totally blew her over the top, and I'm sure she's probably scarred from just this interaction, that she couldn't imagine that such a thing could happen. But again, anyone who has been in Israel, myself was born there and went to study there after university, spoke to many Arabs, even some Palestinians, and I had good interactions with a lot of people who are living there properly, and there are Arab bus drivers, Arabs walking the streets, eating at the same restaurants. As there's no apartheid, as they like to make it seem. Again, most of their argument is just hash out the same narrative over and over again until everyone believes it. So again, thank you for supporting us here at Jewish Uncensored. I'm Israel Chai.
If you believe in what we do here over at Jewish Uncensored, consider supporting us in a few different ways. You can support us monetarily by going to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. You can also go to our new merchandise store, IsraelUncensored.com, where we just dropped a bunch of new merch. Additionally, to gain access to exclusive content, you can go to our memberships tab on this channel and join there. And finally, you can share this video with both family and friends in order to share this message with the world. Thank you so much for your support.